Hello, in this video I'll show you how to make gluten-free hot dog buns. I start out by weighing 380 grams of a gluten-free all-purpose flour. This is a little bit more than 2.5 cups. I use GF Joules all-purpose flour for this recipe. The high starch content works really great with any yeasted dough. Then I add in 35 grams of cornstarch. Next, I add 1/4 cup of granulated sugar and 1 packet of instant yeast. I give these a quick mix together before adding in any of the liquid ingredients. For the liquid, I add 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of whole milk. Using milk rather than water is going to make the dough extra soft. Then I microwave the milk until it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, I add in 1 egg and 4 tablespoons of softened butter. I need this liquid to be 110 degrees Fahrenheit after all the other ingredients are added in, so I typically microwave this until it's about 120 and then let it cool down. 110 degrees Fahrenheit is the ideal temperature to start growing the yeast. If you're using active dry yeast instead of instant yeast, this is the time that you would add the active dry yeast into the milk and let it bloom for at least 5 minutes. Now I turn the stand mixer on to low speed and slowly pour in the liquid while it's mixing. Once all the liquid has been added into the bowl, I turn the speed up to medium-high and let this mix for 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, I turn off the mixer and scrape down the edges of the bowl. Once all of the dough is back in the center, I mix this again on medium-high speed for an additional 2 minutes. Once the dough is thoroughly mixed, I grease the inside of a bowl. Then I scrape down all of the dough from my mixing bowl and turn it out into this bowl to rest. I lightly spray the dough with cooking oil so that it won't dry out, and then I cover the dough and let it rest until it's increased in size by 50%. After the dough has rested, I'm going to divide it into 6 equal portions. To do this, I add the bowl back onto my scale and tare it to 0. Then I put the dough back into the bowl so that I'll know only the weight of the dough. This batch of dough weighed 826 grams. In order to have 6 equal pieces of dough, I divide 826 grams by 6. So each hot dog bun I want to weigh approximately 137 grams. Starting from the total of 826, I remove enough dough until I've taken out 137 grams. In this case, I'm looking for my final number to be about 689 grams. You can see the notepad at the top left of the screen. This is where I've written down all of the weight targets in order to have 6 equal pieces of dough. Every time that I've removed about 137 grams of dough, I start a new dough ball. I keep working in this way until I have a total of 6 dough balls. I add more flour to my hands as needed to prevent the dough from sticking to my hands too badly. Gluten-free dough does tend to have a higher moisture content because the gluten-free flour really needs a lot of moisture to absorb, so you won't have a dry bread. Because it's a relatively wet dough, I roll each of the dough balls in a little bit of flour so that they won't stick to the mat before I work on them. Each of the hot dog buns should be about 6 inches long. I use my bench scraper as a reference for this because my bench scraper is 6 inches. I like to make hot dog buns using a torpedo loaf, so I roll the dough out flat and then roll it up tight. I place the bun on a parchment-lined baking tray and then continue working on the other 6 dough balls. I found it easiest to use the torpedo loaf method to make the hot dog buns because this is a relatively wet dough. It's a lot easier to shape by rolling it out and then rolling it up than it is just to shape it into the hot dog bun form. However, you could skip the torpedo loaf step and just try to shape these each individually. I also find that using the torpedo loaf form allows for a more even second rise. When I'm rolling the dough up to form the torpedo shape, I do try to knock off any of the flour that might be on the outside of the dough. This way, the dough will bake more evenly and not have flour stuck inside of it. After all 6 buns are formed, I space them out on the tray so that they're about an inch apart. I also press the ends down so that they're each about the same length. As long as the hot dog buns aren't more than an inch apart, they'll actually rise and touch sides together during this final proof. Having the sides of each done actually touching during the baking process will make sure that all of the dough remains really soft. Now I cover the buns and let them rise until the sides do start to touch. This typically takes just about an hour, depending on how warm the kitchen is. The last step before baking the hot dog buns is to coat the outside in oil. This will help them darken up in the oven because gluten-free flour is also notorious for being very light. Then I bake these in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 20 minutes. The internal temperature of the hot dog buns should read 202 degrees Fahrenheit once they're fully cooked. And now we have our completed hot dog buns. I like to cut the buns in half, brush them with butter, and toast them in the oven before serving them with hot dogs, meatball subs, or any other type of hoagie sandwich. Thanks for watching this video on how to make gluten-free hot dog buns. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and as always, like and subscribe to see more content.